care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solution Info Show. I'm glad that you could join us again this week. We have another wonderful program for you. If you tuned in last week, you know we talked about senior dental care. It was such a wonderful program with a lot of great information. And at the end, we gave a website for you to go on to check out some tips if you find it difficult to get your loved one with dementia to brush their teeth. I'm not sure everybody received that information, so I'm going to give the website today, and it's www.mouthcarewithoutabattle.org. So just go to that website, mouthcarewithoutabattle.org. When you do, it brings right up some tips, some charts that tells you what will happen and how you can fix it and what you can do to get your loved one in different scenarios, which is a great segue to today's show because we're going to be talking to a dementia coach who has lots of experience helping caregivers dealing with problems that they encounter with their loved one. And this is going to be a great show because caregivers not only need information about dementia, different types of dementia, but they also need practical tips. As a matter of fact, just last week, I was over at our Sarasota Arden Courts, and a caregiver shared with me. She said, you know, a lot of caregivers have been caregiving for a long time. They already know a lot about the disease. There's not a lot to know about it because there's no cure. But she said, I think what we really need are coping skills. I think that is what caregivers crave. And I'm sure that being at home now, we're in the 9th month of this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody's at home. Everybody's getting a little bit more frustrated, not having their regular routines in place, and maybe getting on some nerves of each other with your loved one or other family members. It's natural, it's normal, but we need coping skills how to do that. So today is all about that, and joining me to talk about that is an expert dementia coach, Dr. Kate McCarty. Hi, Dr. Kate. Welcome to the Caregiver
Hi.
Solutions Info Show.
Thank you, Marcia.
Well, I'm glad you're here. You're one of our frequent flyers, as they say, coming onto the show because you add so much information and such valuable information to all of us that can tap into your experience, your expertise. You have over 40 years experience in the healthcare field, I know, and since 2012, you've actually been in business for yourself as a dementia coach, helping caregivers figure this out, figure out what to do, when to do, how to do it, why to do it. It's not easy, as any caregiver will attest to, but with the right tips and information and guidance, we can help make their days and their journey a little bit better. So that being said, first of all, you know, I want to talk to you about a routine. Now, you know, people are home and everyone's routines have changed with the pandemic. We can't go places we usually go to. We can't see people we usually see. We're stuck at home more, and we're kind of out of a routine. And most of us can deal with that. We can find other things to do. But when it comes to somebody with dementia, why is a disruption in routine so detrimental to their day?
There's so much that relies on processing, the brain processing any kind of change. I just had it happen at my house, just because we had to have dinner a little earlier, because having dinner later would have been more stressful. And of course, Mike has early stages. So it's amazing how the tiniest thing can really make a difference. So to get to why that is, of course, as you said, we know there's there's changes in eyesight, there's changes in hearing. And I think there's an overall, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, caution button that's right there, even though a lot of things aren't working with the brain, that something new could be dangerous. Teele talks about fight, flight, or fright. Yeah, fight, flight, or fright. So I think we do have a somewhat of a fear with change, and I think that's very much increased as the brain changes. I mean, as a caregiver, you're confronted with, well, this is not the man I remember, or that's not how he used to respond, and the same is going on for them. Like, what is she doing? Why is she doing this? It's a trigger. So that being said, routine for some of us, personality-wise, can be deadly. It's like, because we like a lot of change and energy, which makes a challenge. And even spatially, there's a difference. We are now in a two-level home, and so I spend an awful lot of time in a separate level. Early stage, I can do that. That's not going to happen later on. I know that. It's so much a day-by-day situation. Now, we know, Marcia, when people move into Arden Courts, they have a brand new routine. And people learn, no matter where their cognition is, they have procedural memory and they will learn. I mean, rarely does someone have trouble finding their room in a nice, well-designed memory care, because the procedural memory is there. And they know at about 12-ish, they're all like little migrating birds. They're heading back to their house, right? So there's some predictability, and that's a comfort zone. That's why memory care works so well. Smaller, routine, yes, activity, not too much, not too little. Just right.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that routine is good, because without it, it kind of elicits a little fear in somebody not knowing what's going to happen next. And people with Alzheimer's disease, they really do better in a routine, knowing what's going to happen next. And it doesn't mean that every single minute of every day has to be exactly the same, but the major things, to have them to be the breakfast at the same time, lunch at the same time, dinner at the same time. And you mentioned Mike, your husband with dementia, got a little upset because you had to do dinner a little earlier because you were going to be on the show today. So right there's a perfect example. So they get kind of out of their comfort zone. They don't know what's happening. You're messing up my routine. And sometimes not only can they be uncomfortable, but sometimes it can cause them to be a little bit agitated even.
Yes.
And so a lot of caregivers don't know what's causing their loved one to act the way they act, and it can be many, many different things. But one big thing can be a change in routine, and that might not be something that a caregiver would necessarily look at, because it's a little change for us, but it could be a big deal for your loved one when they're expecting something to happen at a certain time and it doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah, so routine is really, really important, and I think that one of the best things caregivers can do at home is create, if you haven't already, while you're staying home, create a new routine. They will get used to it if you practice it and keep at it over and over. Like you said, they can learn some newer things with cueing, and cueing is very important. We'll talk a little bit about what cueing means in a few minutes. So I'd like to, Dr. K, give you some scenarios. I'm going to throw some things at you, and these are real life scenarios that I've seen happen, you've seen happen over and over again, and we're just going to put it out there and talk about it and how a caregiver could try different tactics to try to resolve the issue when they're having a problem with their loved one, getting them to do something, right? So This is what we're going to do, and I'm going to throw the first one out. My husband won't get in the shower. No matter what I do, I can't get him to take a shower, and he's stinking. He fights me. I don't know what to do. Dr. Kate, what can I do?
This is a tough one, and it often goes back to personality. First, personality, and also keeping in mind that people are moving back in time and how they process the world. So for many of us, we didn't have showers when we were children. We had bathtubs, which is a nightmare. I'm not saying that's a great idea, because the other thing is, you notice how people don't raise their leg the appropriate distance because of their eyesight change. So I'm not saying the bathtub's a great idea, but there's a lot of unknowns with the shower as time goes on. There's a lot of fear of being naked. I love Teele Snow does a great job with multiple towels, which I think it must be a facility, because nobody would waste that many towels in a darn house. but I get it, so there's a lot of privacy, dignity with towels, right? For my father-in-law, I took care of him, and I remember what always worked was a sweet treat that was literally in the shower, and it depends on the person's preferences and what might lead them there. Had to be ready. The times where I didn't have everything I needed in that bathroom were always a disaster. I mean, everything. The heater had to be right. Ideally, you have a heat lamp, which we don't all have, but it's a lovely way to prep for for the ongoing stages. Having all of that without them knowing that you're all prepped. It's a lot of work. I don't say this lightly, because I know it is a lot of work. Sometimes it's, and rather than the yes, no, don't ever ask a question they can say no to. They will always say no. No is a very safe answer. And sometimes you really do hoodwink them. I know that's probably a very ancient term, but there's a little chicanery, trickery that goes on, hey, I got this new soap, come smell it. And of course, soap is a trigger, depending, right? So there's a lot of little steps that can try to entice them. And to be honest, there's some people that are just not going to go that route. You may need a shower chair. I remember, and it was at Arden Courts, I think it took us 3 months to get one man fully showered, and we gave away an award to the aide that did it. But we had the wife come in with a bikini and a beer. That didn't even work. He was an old boater. So again, using biography to try to,
I'm sure that man didn't go 3 months without getting clean, and you had other tactics
but we wanted to get a full body, right? And no, he was getting a hair. He was actually going to the salon and getting his hair done, but we just weren't getting the entire situation all at once. In that case, for the caregiver, if a caregiver at home has that problem, you can do sponge baths. You can, if it's a nice day outside, you can go outside and play in the water like we used to do when we were kids. You can, water the garden. Right, wash the car together, get them wet, get some soap going on there. You got to be creative, and I think a lot of it does come down to being creative. But first and foremost, I just want to remind the caregivers, before you do anything for your loved one, something that involves them, especially like a shower where they can be
a little bit intimidated, you want to always let them know what's going to happen. You want to preface anything that you're doing with, I'm going to get the water running now for your shower. I'm going to, go ahead and get your clothes laid out. We're going to, get dressed. Tell them what you want them to do so they're not surprised, because sometimes people just start doing and it just kind of startles somebody, and you want to make sure that they understand what's coming next, right? The other thing that I want to comment with what you said was absolutely you got to use whatever trick you have in your book. And when you mentioned the towels and you mentioned Teepa, I want everybody to know that you're referring to Teepa Snow. She's another dementia expert, and she's very well known and goes all over the country doing presentations. And you can look her up on the internet and go and take some of her tips too, because she's really, really interactive. And so you were mentioning Teepa Snow and the towels. So you were referring to when someone's modest, putting towels on them in the shower so, they're not really showing awe, and then working around the towels. And yes, it might cause some little extra laundry, but if it gets the job done, why not, right?
Oh, yeah. It's worth it for sure. And I think that's a shower chair situation, and literally washing through the towel. So they're not really ever making that skin to skin contact, which is so frightening. And the senses are so different with everyone, depending on the touch sensitivity. So it's a very, and I'm pretty sure that one's on YouTube on bathing. So that's very helpful. Oh. The other thing is sometimes you're not the one. Sometimes you're not the one. Maybe it's your son. One of my favorite places years back was a little memory unit. And when there was one man that I was the only one that he would let me shower him. I don't know what that magic was. Somewhat stance though. He was an old football player, and he would like crouch and weave, and I would do that too as we walked. And I made sure everything was set up, and I always had. They had radio. I mean, they had a Bose system, so we always had marching tunes. So I think it brought back football. And we were able to, but meanwhile, we would just trade roles. They would be the activities person while I was the aide. And that is a beautiful flow that you can have in a community. Maybe it's a son, maybe it's an aide. Those are all possibilities, because sometimes it's probably because of your relationship. I mean, it's almost an honor that they don't want to do that, right?
So the bottom line is try different techniques, try different people, do whatever works, whatever, if you have to bribe them, sing. I mean, a lot of times just singing in the shower. People laugh about singing in the shower, but it's a good way to distract them while you're getting the job done. So we got to go to commercial break, and we'll be back with more tips from Dr. Kate.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'm talking with Dr. Kate McCarty. Dr. Kate is a dementia expert, dementia coach, coaching caregivers on ways to have a better relationship and a better way to cope with their loved one that may be suffering from dementia. So we're talking about scenarios and different ways that we can get our loved one to do what we need them to do. So we just talked about the shower. Let's talk about the fact that we need our loved one to go with us, whether it's to go with us into the kitchen to have lunch or to go with us outside to get in the car, but they don't want to budge from the couch. They just want to sit there. What are some things that a caregiver can say or do that's going to help get that loved one up and on their feet without creating a struggle? Dr. Kate, what can I do?
Well, that's one of the hardest ones, apathy. One of the things that I wanted to make sure I addressed was attention span. When we look at a normal cognition person with normal cognition, they can hold on to like a scenario for about 30 seconds. So if your loved one has some form of dementia and is sort of become a couch potato, you can guarantee they don't have 30 seconds. So you want to present your argument for getting out the door in as simple a way as possible. And the rule of thumb is, and I just got this through one of the trainings I was doing, is I think they said mild cognitive impairment could be down to 10-second retention. And then it keeps going. So 10 words. So early stage would be 10 words. And then ultimately people are holding on for 2 seconds. So it's 2 words. Let's go. So when we say, oh, we're going to get a shower today and I'm going to make sure the water's all great and it's going to be fun and let's go, they can't process all that. So let's not do shower. Let's say we have a doctor's appointment. Nobody likes to go to the doctor. Sorry, doctors, but most of us really don't like to go to the doctors, even with normal cognition. So I would definitely look for ways to sandwich it. Like, do you want to see that new thing we put on the car? Now, see, that was too many words. But my husband's very, very thrilled with his car. So, and lately, because of driving, I'm saying, I need your help learning how to do the autopilot. Can you come help me? Right? So we get there, and then we're going to stop here, and then right afterwards, we're going to go have lunch at that place you like. So kind of incremental steps. Now that's, if they're still in their bathrobe, it really takes, I think the saddest thing for me at my age is it takes a lot of work to be a caregiver to orchestrate all those parts to get someone to the doctor. I'm loving telehealth. Mike actually took a shower for telehealth the other day because he doesn't take a shower regularly.
Right?
Right, because it's the cute one.
Well, it's probably one of the hardest things for caregivers, right? To get them to get going, to go places, to get them ready. At first thing I have to say is number one, give yourself plenty of time, because not only is it hard and it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time. And you don't want to start getting ready when you know you have to be out the door in 5 minutes. So take the time to get ready, and then when you need to leave, be short and sweet, like you said, Dr. Kate, let's go, right? Or entice them with something. Let's go get an ice cream, and then on the way, stop at the doctor, wherever you have to go, get them out the door. If you say the doctor, that might be a good thing or a bad thing, like you said. So if you say the doctor, they may really put their foot in the ground and not move at all because they're not going to the doctor. But now it's telehealth, and that was good for you. That was easier, right? So be flexible. And also, anytime as a caregiver you're trying to do something, it might not happen when you want it to happen. So not only do you have to give yourself enough time, you need to say, okay, this isn't going to happen right this minute, then come back later and revisit it. Maybe your loved one would rather have a shower in the morning or at night, and you should know that if you know them well enough. So you want to, again, that comes back to what we talked about, routine, right, Dr. Kate? Keep their routine,
Yes.
whatever their routine was their whole life. Don't start mixing it up and getting them a shower, at night when they're used to it in the morning because they were getting up to go to work and they always took a shower in the morning. So knowing your person and knowing what their routine was before dementia is going to help you tremendously in dealing with them with dementia, right?
For sure.
So yeah, that's a hard one, getting up to go. And I like what you said, Dr. Kate, about can you help me? Now that's a perfect question to pose to somebody because most people like to be helpful and everyone needs a purpose for doing something. So if you're asking your loved one, can you help me with something? Most times they're going to say yes, and they're going to get up and come with you. Well, come with me. Can you help me with something? I need your help. And then they'll be able to get up and you can guide them and get them to go wherever you need them to go. So ask those magic questions. Don't forget to say please and thank you. Just because you're talking to your spouse with dementia, please and thank you goes a long way because you definitely want to give them that respect and that dignity that they need and deserve. Which brings me to the fact that we're going to be talking about respect and dignity and how can you do that besides saying please and thank you. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment when we come back from break. So stay with us. There's much, much more to learn. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care for people with memory loss because that's all they do. And so they are a great resource for caregivers. Today they'd like to offer you a free book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers. If you don't have this book, I highly recommend you asking for it, and all you have to do to get it for free is just send an email and say, I heard about this book, the free offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info show, and email your name, address, and telephone number, and they'll be happy to send you the book right to your home. That email address is Arden Courts is delray@arden-courts.com. So email delray@arden-courts.com. You can see it there on your screen. It's a great thing to have. If you know somebody that it would help and you watch the show and you want to share, get it for them because they would be really, really appreciative, I'm sure. So my guest today is Kate McCarty, PhD, dementia coach. And we're talking about practical tips for caregivers to solve solutions that caregivers face every single day. So we're talking about how to get them to take a shower, how to get them to do what we need them to do. And it's never easy. But I think there's an underlying premise we have to remember when we're dealing with our loved one is knowing who they are, right? Knowing what they value, knowing what they're all about, their personality too, and giving them the dignity and respect that they need and deserve. And that will go a long way to getting them to do what you need them to do in your everyday caregiving tasks. So, for example, we talked about saying please and thank you. Those words are magic when it comes to talking to people, as we know, but don't forget it when you're talking to your loved one. You can get upset and get frustrated. Don't forget your P's and Q's and your please and thank yous. Dr. Kate, do you have another example that you can give about how do we respect and give dignity to the person we're caring for?
Two things come to mind, and one is that I find that it's very important for me to do things for me so that my frustration doesn't spill over. And when I've taken care of things for me, it's much easier for me to respect and give dignity, even though it's not the same man, not the same person. So self-care, which I hate the term because I think, well, they're talking about, we don't have time for that. But in small snippets, self-care, whatever that is for that person. And then what I've noticed makes a big difference, and it's a respect of a past relationship. We no longer have that cuddly, romantic relationship. That's gone. But a hug will go a long way to keeping sanity. And I can also say that you stink, right? Because that's 2 words. You stink, right? And get a shower, right? Sometimes that doesn't work, but it's one strategy. But memorializing, remembering this is the person you had all those great adventures with. And that's not where you're at right now. But this man got you out of love a lot of pickles. And now I'm here for him. So that they talk about having an object in your pocket or something on the refrigerator that helps you remember what was, so that you don't lose track of the dignity and respect aspects.
Yeah. And great advice, because we can't take care of others if we don't take care of ourselves, right? And we have to dignify ourselves, give ourselves care, respect ourselves enough as caregivers to take care of ourselves, right? A couple other things that might be helpful, talking about dignity and respect. Don't ever talk about your loved one in front of them and not acknowledge that they're there. And I know sometimes caregivers don't mean to do this, but they might be at a doctor's office talking about their loved one as if they weren't there. Or they might be in a social setting or a group setting and just talking about them as if they were invisible. That can be very hurtful to your loved one. Don't think that they don't know what's going on, because even though your loved one may not verbalize what they're feeling it, whether they can verbalize it or not, right? So try to include them whatever you're doing, just include them. And the other thing I thought of, sometimes when caregivers in the old days before the pandemic could go out to restaurants and take your loved one out to eat, the man wants to pay the bill, right? Well, you've taken away his credit cards and he doesn't have the credit cards to pay the bill, so he may not like it that you're putting out the money and he wants to do that. So one of the tricks that we've learned is to kind of use those credit cards that are fake, that actually come in the mail, trying to get you to sign up for a new credit card. And it looks like a credit card. It's got numbers and may have, a name on there. And I take those and save them to give to caregivers to put them in their husband's wallets. So if he wants to get and pay the bill and the bill comes, let him give one, and then you kind of slyly go to the restroom, the ladies' room, and hand the real credit card to the waiter. And what that does is that it gives your husband that dignity and respect that he's still the provider, that he's still the man taking his lady out on a date with no fight, no fuss, no words, just, simple action. So these are some of the things that you can do to help things go a little bit smoother. And speaking of restaurants, I know, Dr. Kate, you've done this many times. They have little cards that explain your situation, like little tiny business cards that say something like, the person I'm with has memory loss, so please direct your questions to me, or please and thank you for your understanding, because your loved one may act out. And so you don't want to, again, talk about them in front of them, so use those little cards as a way to get around that. For Dr. K, back to routine, and we've talked about how caregivers can get their loved one to do certain things. Let's talk about some activities the caregivers can do with their loved one now that they're home more. They can't go out to places and shop in restaurants and even day centers and daycare centers like they used to, but they're home more. So individual pursuits, that would be something that you can help and give to your loved one to keep them busy and occupied, and give you a chance to, go to the bathroom or do whatever you have to do. What are some individual things that you might, as a caregiver, offer to your loved one to do?
Somewhat, this goes back to biography. Like, if a man has never vacuumed, he's probably not going to start vacuuming now. But he might sweep, because as we do that time travel and go back, as a child, he may have swept, he may have raked. It's a great time for raking. I remember a caregiver that his entire job every day was cutting up the compost. And she used a plastic butter knife can do a lot of things. I've done cucumber salad with a plastic butter knife. So there's a lot of little things, but you have to think and be creative, because some things just don't work out. One of the fellas that we worked with at the adult day was, he was the best dismantling boxes. That was a really good task. Right around sundowning, could keep him focused while we waited for the bus to come. He would just be, tearing down those boxes, flattening them out. A lot of praise, giving a lot of praise for that job. But I think of women, I think of the folding of laundry. That's a classic, right? It doesn't mean that you have to keep washing laundry. We used to unfold it and put it right back out again. I remember working with some folks that were old enough that they'd worked for the Red Cross during World War II. And they would love, I would cut the old sheet from the thrift shop in 3-inch strips. And oh my goodness, it was so much fun ripping that. They'd rip it and then they'd roll them, and they would, very fussily take all the fringes off. And then every morning I'd go in and unroll them, and we'd have a brand new Red Cross event, right? So we had a fellow that was a postal worker, so he was always working with the paper. We'd have papers and envelopes, and, he was very good at putting on labels. We literally, did real stuff, not all fake stuff, right? But finding that niche and making it a routine. They go together. So this is why we have the upstairs, is because I usually go upstairs from work at 5:30 and cook dinner. So when I went up to cook dinner at 4:45, his routine is to have emptied the dishwasher. I didn't give that to him. It's just what has happened. And so he was terribly flustered because I was at a sink. I messed up his routine, and then I didn't have pots. And yeah, so it kind of all feeds together.
Well, the tip there is just forgive yourself, right? Every day is not going to be perfect. You can be, perfect until you're not, and none of us are going to have a perfect day no matter what life happens. So forgive yourself. And again, that goes back to taking care of yourself as a caregiver. You have to forgive yourself sometimes if you're doing the best that you can. That was a great story, great tip for that. And I also like what you said about don't give a man who never did housework the job of vacuuming, because that wouldn't be meaningful to him. And the key here is meaningful activities. So you have to find out what they used to do, what they enjoyed doing, and then allow them to do what they still can do. And I love the rolling the bandages from the Red Cross. That goes way back, right? And that's a great example. You know, some people like puzzles. I mean, my sister loves jigsaw puzzles. The more pieces, the better. I absolutely hate jigsaw puzzles. So that would be something that I would like someone to stick in front of me if I had dementia or not. I just wouldn't want to do it. But my sister, you know, she would love to do that. So you have to find out what they like and what's going to motivate them. And that's the biggest thing. And like you said, make sure that it's a routine. So if you have a routine and you have something you need them to do, make it the same time every day. It doesn't have to be the same activity every day, but they know that there's going to be something that they're going to be doing, you know, every day. And you can mix up some of the activities, right? But those are great tips. What about some things that caregivers could do together with their loved one on a regular basis that would be meaningful for both of them, Dr. Kate?
Well, of course, I think of setting the table, and I don't think that's where you were going. But you know, that is something you can do together. Or making a salad, one person can open the bag and dump it into the bowl if you're further along. Stage does apply here. You know, some people that would be very astute at making a salad are no longer going to be able to do that as time goes on. But together, we have an example, personal example. We've been travelers the whole time Mike and I have known each other. We've cruised in sailboats and road trips. So every weekend we have a road trip. And it's easy to do in the pandemic. Try to go early and avoid crowds, but that's something that we come together in a common cause. Similarly, and it's very much based on biography, Mike has been a computer wizard. So he now has a new computer, and he's doing a lot of the video clips, which I don't know how to do that. But he's doing it, and he's loving it. So that's a sense of purpose. Prior to the new computer, which I was sort of not thrilled about him getting, it was all TV. It was all the do-it-yourself shows. And that's feeding a lot of energy about what we should spend and do. So that wasn't very good. And I'm kind of unique because I'm a working caregiver. So not everybody is in that same boat. Memory cafes, I think I can say that. They're something we do together. Mike is a part of a virtual men's discussion group that comes out of Virginia, but it's virtual. So it's all the guys, and they talk politics with a leader. That's one of the things, too, is that sometimes it's too much of you, and they need others. You know, and that could come from a caregiver, virtual, whatever that looks like, a family member willing to take on a little extra time with the person, because sometimes it is too much.
And it doesn't have to be a lot. And like you said, sometimes there are things that are too much, and someone with dementia might get frustrated, might get overstimulated. Sometimes, you know, it's just they can't deal with it. So keep things simple is what I hear you saying. And it can be as simple as taking a walk together. Go for a walk. That can be easily done maybe after dinner or before dark. Go for a walk together. It's going to serve a lot of purposes. It's going to get some of their energy out, number one, which you want. Number two, it's going to be time spent together, quality time, walking and talking. And talk about the things that you see along the way. And just talk about the nature and talk about what's going on in the environment. And connect, you know, in that very simple way. But that can serve a caregiver very well because it actually will de-stress the caregiver, too, to just get out and get a little bit of exercise. You can also do simple games together. And, again, make sure they're simple so your loved one's not frustrated. I remember I used to play There was a man who loved to play poker, loved to go to the casino, but of course he couldn't do that anymore. But I had a deck of cards, and his eyes lit up with a deck of cards, and he was actually able to play War, that simple kids game where you both throw down a card, and which one is higher, of the two cards wins. And we played that for a long, long time, and he was really happy because he was playing cards again. Singing songs together, reminiscing with songs, put on some music, do a little dancing at home, right? That's always good. And talk about Dr. Kate, about photo albums. How can reminiscing in photo albums help the caregiver and the person with dementia?
I think in a lot of ways it does. It brings back the past for both of you. So that's very positive. People tend to relate more to the past, like they don't see themselves as they are, they see themselves as they were much younger. So it helps with that. I like a very focused, this is tough because if you look at your average person's scrapbook, it's like busy, very busy. Scrapbooking can be your enemy in dementia world because you've got like 50 things to look at on one page. So be very simple about that. I have a lady that joins us virtually, and she shows me the wedding picture. That's first of all, she made the gown, so there's a lot of pride. So selective pictures, scrapbooking. I mean, looking at scrapbooks and the people they treasure. The uncle that they only saw once, that's not going to be the bell ringer for memory. But the treasured memories, for Mike, it's travel pictures, So those are, it just depends, again, on what that history is. But it can bring solace like that. When people are distressed, just sitting down, one of the places I worked at had, I forget what they called it, but it was like it was your own book. And you'd sit down and it'd say, oh, look at that. It says here that you married Frank Luke and you had 2 kids and their names were, and it just sort of de-escalated that feeling of, which was usually in the afternoon. And then looking at select pictures. Like my mom used to have a box this big. We're not talking the box of pictures. Although in early stages you could pick through those. But yes, that's a good activity. A Pictionary. I'm surprised Pictionary works long into this. And I mean just a simple word and a drawing and he guesses. And we see that's meeting the need throughout the stages. I love War. If you were a card player, if you were never a card player, then you probably don't. I mean, I get stumble around spades and clubs all the time because I'd never played many cards. So, and it's like bingo. We say bingo is so bad for people with memory. Well, it's not if you were going to play bingo 5 times a week. We might have to have a smaller card, have 2 rows instead of 4, and maybe not bingo. Maybe it's bin.
So basically, do what they like doing, but simplify it, right? Simplify it. You want to create a sense of belonging when you're looking at those pictures. And I like what you said, it's their book, and you sort of have their simple biography in there. And when you're saying it out loud to them, it almost makes them feel like, hey, they know who I am. Because a lot of times, your loved one may lose the ability to verbalize or to talk, but you can still engage them. So it's basically engaging them. It doesn't have to be, through vocalization. Engage them through touch. Engage them through sight. Engage them through their smell, like aromatherapy. If they're Italian, they're going to love smelling garlic and onions and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of ways to connect and things to do related to that, making those connections. I want to talk a few minutes, Dr. Kate. You mentioned a few minutes earlier about Memory Cafe. I know that you have been doing memory cafes for a long time now. How has the pandemic affected now that we can't get together to do a memory cafe, and how are you still doing them?
It was a rough start because of technology. But and we were at the end, we had been doing them 4 years in the Tampa Bay area. So we kind of had a senior class, and we did lose most of our senior class in COVID. Late stage, not from COVID, but I can attest to the fact that I can see the decline. It feels like it's faster because we're so isolated. But we have a really steady group that gets on Zoom and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and today we had a Tuesday because we had San Antonio. And I'm in Texas, but I'm not. I'm here, right? So the virtual platform has worked out. AARP is now giving, I think it's called Technology Tuesday. They're giving people training on how to get onto Zoom. So that's very good because it's it's a beast if you haven't done it a lot. We have some that are not coming because it's a caregiver that's an adult child that's working, so they can't get them on. So that's kind of sad.
Why don't you give us a synopsis of what an actual memory cafe is supposed to do? What was it designed for?
Well, and this is it's international, and everyone does them differently. I can say I do mine as a strictly social, engaging memory kind of an event. Today we did one where we did a little craft. We actually made a luminary. That's not we don't usually do that. It's for both. It's for care partners, so it can be 2 or 3. It doesn't matter, but often it's spouses. Tend to be retirees because they're during the day. And today's topic was the Harvest Festival. So we played Name That Tune. I use Spotify and I play it behind so you can't see the name. And like the Addams Family, and they resonated with that. We played some Harvest Moon by Bing Crosby, also by Neil Young, because we have some younger people with Alzheimer's, right? So we did a little Name That Tune. We did a little trivia. We talked about what we were going to do for Halloween, if anything. And one of the things that I like to do, because not everybody's at the same stage who shows up, a simple would you rather. So, in basically using my hands, hayride, bonfire. And then you'll always have lots of responses.
Right, and your response is about why you would like one than the other. I think what's great about, if we have to think of something great about being able to do everything now virtually, is that people can join the Memory Cafe, the ones that you do, in one part of the country, people can join in another part and don't have to physically be there, but they can still benefit from participating. So I want to give everybody your website, because if they want to find out about your memory cafes, they can go onto your website, and there's information on there how to register and also more information. So if you would like to contact Dr. Kate, go on her website. It's www.kate with a C, C-A-T-E, McCarty, McCarty.com, KateMcCarty.com. Find out all kinds of great information. There's a way to contact Dr. Kate. You can email her also, KateMcCarty@gmail.com, and you can ask her any questions about anything you've heard on the show. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Kate, for joining the show again. We always enjoy having you. Such a pleasure communicating to others about how they can help and keep their loved ones engaged at home and fix those problems and work on those. There's always hope, right?
Yes, there is. And it takes more. When more of us get together, we have better suggestions. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Enjoyed having you. And thank you for tuning in. Next week, another caregiversolutions.info show. Join us on the iHeartRadio app under WNN, or on your computer on the website caregiversolutions.info every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Thank you. Have a good evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week